the novel and the definition of the novel. But before that, we are going to ask some questions about the previous lecture. Let me ask you this question. I want you to think of the following questions. According to you, which one of these changes that we have talked about last lecture, which one of these changes was the most important in the 18th and 17th century? Yes? Yes, you can answer this. The political change was the most important change in the 18th century. Why? If I ask you, why was the political change the most important change in the 18th and 17th century? Yes, because political stability is very important to live peacefully and to do anything in life. Now let me ask you, what were the 4 revolutions that occurred in the 18th and 17th century? We talked about 4 revolutions. You remember the first one, the Glorious Revolution, and it happened in which age? 17th or 18th? If I ask you, when was the Glorious Revolution? In the 17th or in the 18th? Yes, that's right, in the 17th century. So, what were the 4 revolutions at that age in 18th and 17th? 2 centuries. The first one was the Glorious Revolution. The second one, yes, the American Revolution. The third one, yes, it was the French Revolution. That's right. And the fourth one, we had at that time the Industrial Revolution. Yes, people began to be more, or to move from which place to which place. People at that time, when we say city migration, people moved from city to village, or the other answer, from village to city. Which answer is the right answer? From city to village or from village to city? Yes, that's right. So, people began to move from village to city, not from city to village. If I ask you another question, what were the 7 classes according to Daniel before? We had 7 classes at that time. These were, who can tell me the answer? Yes, 7 classes. I will help you by giving you the first one. We have the great. Then we have what? The rich. The third one, the middle sort. The fourth one, the working traders. The fifth one, the country people. And 6, we have the poor. And the last one, as you remember, we have, yes, the miserable. If I ask you another question, what were the aims of the Glorious Revolution? What were the aims of Glorious Revolution? We had 2 aims at that time. The first one, to get rid of whom? Of James the second and his injustice. The second aim, we had political and social settlement. Let me ask you another question. When did the American Revolution start? It started in 1775. What were the goals or the aims of the American Revolution? We have three. As you remember, we have three aims. The first one, independence, right? The second one, can you answer this? We have, yes, freedom. And the third one, we have equality. The French Revolution, let me ask you a question about the French Revolution. It was started in three choices: 1784, 1789, 1800s. Which answer is the right one? Yes, that's the right answer, 1789. Who came at the end of this French Revolution? Who came at the end of this French Revolution? Daniel Defoe, Napoleon Bonaparte, or Charles II? Who came at the end of the French Revolution and took the power? You remember that? Yes, that's the answer, Napoleon Bonaparte. What were the aims of the French Revolution? We have, as you remember, three aims. The first one, liberty. The second one, equality. The third one, fraternity. If I ask you, what's the meaning of fraternity? Yes, that's right. To be in groups or to be in association together. We have medical fraternity. As example, you remember that. Now let's see a question on Industrial Revolution. If I ask you, give me a bad effect of the Industrial Revolution. Only one. We have more than one, but give me only one. We have air pollution. That's right. Okay. These are some questions about previous lecture. Now, let's start with today's lecture. We are going to deal with what? The first one, the emergence of the English novel, or the appearance, or the beginning of the English novel. We are going to define the English novel, so its definition, and we will see a lot of ideas about definitions. Then we are going to talk about its features or characteristics of the English novel, and we are going to talk about its purposes or its aims. Now let's start. The definition of the novel. Critics usually disagree on a unified definition for the novel as a kind of art. So we don't have one definition for the English novel. We can define it with any of these definitions. Let's start with its beginning. The English name is derived from the Italian novella. So it is an Italian word, which is novella, and the meaning of this word, a little new thing. So it was a little new thing. Although it was a new form of writing, the novel replaced poetry and drama since its beginning in the 17th and 18th century. It grew in production in the 18th century and became the primary form of literature ever after. So it became the most important aspect of literature, and it continues till this time. So it is still a popular form of literature. According to David Lodge, by the way, is an English critic and author and a novelist. According to David Lodge, in his book, Language of fiction says in criticism and verbal analysis of the English novel. So this is his book. He says that we assess a novelist according to the success with which he constructs in fictional world in which every action or utterance contributes to our understanding of any other. So we can call a novel, it is a kind of a novel if the novelist succeeded in portraying fictional world in which every action or utterance contributes to our understanding of any other. So if we understand the novel very well, we can call it a fictional world. Since this is a created world, we look or a logic, consistency and design in the whole, which eludes us in the real world. In both worlds, the same kinds of questions are raised. So we have the same kinds of thought also. Processes are set in motion, but in the fictional world, we have stronger expectations of finding the answers and reaching conclusions. So look at this definition again. So we have fictional world, the most important aspect, and we have finding the answers and reaching conclusions. So it's very important to find conclusions at the end of this fictional work. Henry James had a unique perception of the novel. A novel is a living thing, all one and continuous, like any other organism, and in proportion as it lives, it will be found. I think, this is written by Henry James, I think that in each of the parts there is something of the other parts. So we can find characterization in the setting. We have relationship between the elements of the novel in the work of art. So again, a novel is a living thing. It never dies. We can see novels from the 18th and 17th century, and they are still alive. All one and continuous, they will be continuous. Even in the future, we will see these novels from previous ages, like any other organism, like human being. Since the human being exists, a novel will exist. And in proportion as it lives, it will be found. I think that in each of the parts there is something of the other parts. This is very important. So it will never die until all human beings die, or all organisms. Organisms, you know, organism, the meaning of organism, living creature. Some critics go further than that. They think that the work of the novelist is creative, not descriptive. The novelist should create his novel from his mind and imagination. So, the novelist creates something which doesn't exist at all. So we have a new thing in existence. According to Austin Wright, a novel is a kind of communication. This is very, very important. So a novel is a kind of communication between whom and whom? Yes, between the novelist himself and his audience or the readers. It acts as a bridge between the novelist and audience. So we have communication between the novelist and the audience. Any good novel will keep its readers' interest all over the novel. They feel that they can't stop reading. So if you want to read a novel, you have to get enough time for this aspect of reading, since you can't stop at once. You have to finish a novel. If you have a novel, maybe some novels are around 1,000 pages or less or more. Sometimes we have enough time to read these kind of novels. Now let's see E.M. Forster and his idea about the novel. You remember, E.M. Forster has a great book about the novel. Aspects of the novel is very important book for studying the novel. We have E.M. Forster. He is a critic and he is a novelist. He wrote many novels like A Passage to India, and we have Where Angels Fear to Tread, also Howard's End. These are some novels written by this great novelist, E.M. Forster. E.M. Forster sees novel as a kind of art that imitates or represents images of life. So it's a kind of representation of life or imitation of real life. So it's not real life, it's an imitation of real life, real or imagined, abstract or concrete, ranging from the most specific and individualized to the most universal and archetypal. This is taken from Wright, 1982. Another kind of definition, a novel is a kind of art, good artistic experience. So it's an artistic experience. It's not a communication. It's not a kind of communication in this aspect. It's not a kind of imitation. It's a kind of artistic experience. So it was written, or it is written, for the purpose of embodying his artistic flavor. It is written for artistic sake, to show how it is well made. This is the aim of the novelist himself, for himself, not for communication or imitation of real life. This is very important again. A novel is a kind of art, good artistic experience. It is written for artistic sake, not for any other purpose, only to embody that it is a kind of art, to show artistic features in this work. Now let's see the first novel. There was a great effect of Elizabethan drama on the appearance of the novel, so we can sense Elizabethan drama in some works in the 17th and 18th century. On the appearance of the novel, some critics consider Afra Behan the first novelist, and she made a living from publishing novels. So if I ask you, why did some critics consider Afra Behan the first novelist? Some critics considered Afra Behan the first novelist because she made a living from publishing her novels. She wrote Orinoco in 1688 and borrowed a lot from the French romances. She borrowed a lot from the French romances, but Daniel Defoe is credited with the appearance of the true English novel. So we can consider Daniel Defoe as the first English novel, or the true, as we can see, the true English novel. So he was the first English novelist, Daniel Defoe. By the publication of Robinson Crusoe in 1719. Features of the novel. Now let's see the features or characteristics of the novel. The first feature, we have the novel is written in prose. So it's written in prose, not in any other language like poetic language or like other plays, dramatic language. We have the novel is written in prose, but there is sometimes poetic language in it. So we can find some poetic language or some poems, a kind of poems in English novels. But the main language should be in prose. The second feature, there is a unity of structure between the events. So we have unity in structure between events. We can't say different scenes from different areas and put them together and say it is a novel. We should have unity of structure between the events. If I am talking about, for example, a novel which takes place in France, I should talk about the area and the surrounding, the place, the time, and we have the characters, not one from France and the other character is from another area, and we have a mixture of different people and different places. These different places and different characters don't make a novel. So there is a unity of structure between the events. They should be related. The third one, there is an order in relation to time, as we have said, in time and place. Some novelists leave their novels open without an end. So at the end of its time, some novelists leave this conclusion for the reader, not for himself. So the novelist leaves this area for the reader, not for himself. So he leaves the end of the novel open without an end. 4. There are characters. So we have characterization is very important in this aspect of writing. These characters are fictional, even though they have similarity to real people. There is a kind of imitation of real people. The novelist tries to make his imaginative characters believable to some extent. So I don't expect to find real characters in the novel. For example, my neighbor, whose name is Ahmad, I don't expect to find him, everything about him in the novel. If I want to write a novel, I will not talk every detail about my neighbor and say he is a character in my novel. So the novelist tries to make his imaginative. He will try to imagine the features, the characteristics of his characters, and try to create his own characters. The novelist tries to make his imaginative characters believable to some extent. Therefore, a reader can expect some actions and reactions in the novel. But pay attention to this. Characters should be to some extent be believable, not imaginary from outer space. They should be believable. 5. A novel is of a certain length. Should be not too long, not too short. So a poem can be anything from a couplet, 2 lines only, a couplet, to 1,000 pages or even more. But a novel can't be 3 or 4 pages. We can't say if we have 3 or 4 pages of prose, even though when we have characters and events, time, place, etc., we can't say this is a kind of novel. So can't be 3 or 4 pages. Length is very important feature to the novel in order to expose at least the elements of the novel. So it's a kind of entertainment for the readers and for the audience. So we have to get a very long novel. If there is a prose narrative, now let's see the length of some aspects of or some sorts of prose. If there is a prose narrative of 20 or 30 pages or less, remember this. If we have a prose narrative of 20 or 30 pages or less than 20 or 30, it is called what? A short story. So it is called a short story. 20, 30 and less, it is called short story. If there is a prose narrative between 40 or 50 and 100, from 100 till around 40 or 30, it is called what? Novella. Not novel, novella. So a novel is usually more than 100 pages. So we can say that a novel is more than 100 pages. So 100 pages and more. Let's try to see them again. So we have short story, 20 or 30 pages or less, 100 to 30 or 40 pages, it is called novella. 100 and more, it is called novel. So we have three kinds of prose writing: short story, novella, and novel. If I ask you, what are the differences between novel, novella, and short story in relation to length? Yes, that's the answer. 100 and more, novel. 100 to 40 or 30, novella. Less than 30 or 20 pages, short story. Now let's see the main reasons behind the rise of the novel. These are not only the reasons, we have only the main reasons or the most important reasons behind the rise of the novel. The first one, we have a growing middle class. Since we had a lot of people from the middle class, we can expect a great audience for the novel. The second one, we have printing made books and written material available. As a result of that, there was a large number of booksellers. They encouraged novelists to write more and more. A third reason for the rise of the novel, more reading public. There was an increasing number of readers. A lot of women began to read, so there was a nation of readers, as Johnson described them. So during this age, we have a nation of readers, great number of readers at that age. So we expect that novelists started to write more and more novels. The fourth one, political and social stability in this age. Since we had political and social stability at that age, everyone felt peaceful and could produce any literary work. 5. Good novelists appeared during this age. We had great novelists that appeared during this age. Famous novelists in the 18th century are, we can expect some of these great novelists. We have, as you remember, Defoe is a very important novelist. Other major 18th century English novelists are Samuel Richardson, author of Pamela. This is a great novel written by Richardson in 1740. He also wrote Clarissa in around 1747 or 48. Also we have Henry Fielding, who wrote Joseph and Rose in 1742. Oliver Goldsmith, author of The Vicar of Wakefield, he wrote that in 1766. So the most important novelists during the 18th century, if I ask you this question, give me 3 names of novelists appeared in the 18th century. Yes, Daniel Defoe, number 1. Richardson, number 2. Henry Fielding or Fielding, number 3. 6. We have License Act of 1737. After this act, drama was subjected to censorship. There were many restrictions on dramatists. Therefore, there was a tendency to write novels better than plays. Most of the people wanted to read novels instead of attending theaters, which were for the high class. 7. The rise of individualism. During the 18th century, as we have said before in the revolutions, most of the revolutions focused on individualism. We will see that during the 18th century, there was also a rise of individualism. Each one felt so important in his society. So each one or each member in the English society was very, very important. This individualism not only weakening the traditional relationships, but also the stress on the importance of personal relationships, which is a characteristic of the society and the novel during this century. So during this century, individual or human being was very important. He felt the importance of his existence, and he was proud of himself. Ian Watt says that there was a triple rise appeared in the 18th century. According to Watt, we have three rises. We have the rise of the middle class, rise of literacy, and rise of the novel. Again, we have rise of the middle class, growing number of middle class, rise of literacy, people could read and write at that time, great, as we said before. Johnson described them as nation of readers. 3, we have rise of the novel, the emergence or the beginning of writing great number of novels. So if I ask you, Ian Watt says that there was a triple rise appeared in the 18th century. What was that triple rise? Yes, rise of the middle class, rise of literacy, rise of the novel. These three things rose in the 18th century. The 18th century holds not only the birth of the English novel, but hope and confidence replace doubt and uncertainty. People began to feel stable and everything is okay with them. So hope and confidence. They became confident of themselves and they had great hope in doing something. In their financial stability, they could work and get some money from their working. Matthew Arnold called the 18th century age of prose. So according to this critic, we can see it was an age of prose. As you remember, prose, it's a kind of writing without poetic flavor in it, or some poetic flavor in prose. It's related to novels. Great prose dominated that age. Novelists became better known than poets. During this age, novelists became famous rather than poets. Since its arrival in the 18th century, the novel has come a long way. When 18th century novelists such as Defoe, Richardson, and Fielding wrote, their writing was a reflection of the society they lived in from their point of view. So these great novelists reflected the idea or the ideas of their society, and they reflected a full picture about their life in their societies. They wrote about the outside appearance of what society was and how characters were. Some critics describe the novelists of this age. They focused on the external description, so they described outside appearance of their society. So external description of life. Their novels were full of details. They examined life in depth. Somehow they mix real life and fictional life together. So again, these novelists wrote about the outside appearance of what society was and how characters were. Some critics describe the novelists of this age as external description of their society. Their novels were full of details. So their novels were full of details. This is one characteristic of their novels full of details. They examined life in depth, especially from outside. They mix real life and fictional life. Again, tell me the characteristics of writing novels during this period by these great novelists. We have, they were full of details. They examined life in depth. They mix real life and fictional life together. According to Stevenson, Defoe invented the English novel. He is considered as the father of the English novel. He contributed a lot to the English novel and to the literary traditions of his age. He was a turning point in the history of the English novel. So, we are going to take a full lecture about this great novelist, Defoe. So, Defoe is very important novelist during all the ages and for the novel itself. The purposes of novelists were, now let's see the aims or the goals of novelists. Why did they write their novels? If I ask you this, why did they write their novels? We will see the answer. The first goal, to teach new values. So the first one, to teach new values. The second goal, we have to entertain their readers. 3, to deliver messages to the readers of what they wanted. 4, to help less educated readers understand life better. 5, to write in a simple language, in prose rather than verse. Let simple people understand. 6, to write about their present life. They moved from supernatural to natural events in their novels. So again, they moved from supernatural, superstitious and supernatural to natural events in their novels. The novelists in this age intended to write novels about normal life in their society. So they intended to write about normal life in their society. So again, let's see the purposes of the novelists. Again, to teach new values, to entertain their readers, to deliver messages to the readers of what they wanted, to help less educated readers read more and understand life better, to write in a simple language in order to let simple people understand their novels, to write about their present life. Now let's see novels. Novels encourage readers to think of their lives. As we said, they show the shortcomings in the society and let the readers discover the right solutions for them. They supply the readers with a lot of information about unfamiliar topics. Matthew Arnold thinks that a novel acts upon its readers to benefit them or change their behavior or satisfy their needs, to heal, to teach, to persuade, on larger scale, to influence society or the world. So this is a very important view of the purpose of the novel. Again, Matthew Arnold thinks that a novel acts upon its readers to benefit them or change their behavior or satisfy their needs, to heal, to teach, to persuade, or on longer scale to influence society or the world. So we can sense a great influence of these novelists over their society. They had a great influence, control over their society. Anti-novel view against the novel. People from the upper class, not from the middle class and lower classes, people from the upper class were against any change in society and in literature. So any change in society or literature, they were against this change. They were anti-novel. They attacked this new kind of literature. They thought that it was degrading form of writing. So, according to them, it was a low or not good for them. It is degrading kind of writing. Poor language. It contained poor language. 2. Bringing bad values. So they thought that novels brought bad values to their society and to their people. They corrupt people. They corrupted people. Full of love stories, bad romances, bad relationship between women and men. So they were against that. Now let's see. So again, the idea, according to these upper classes, they were against novel because novels were full of love stories or bad romances. Novels corrupt people by embodying bad values, and it's a kind of poor writing, or it contained poor language. With the arrival of novelists in the 19th century, now let's see the future of the novel. With the arrival of novelists in the 19th century, such as Dickens, Joyce, and Bronte, there was a great change in their novels. The intention of the novelists changed from the external, as you remember, from the outside, and the description from outside, to description from inside, or internal. So we have intention of novelists changed from the external to internal. These novelists began to reflect the consciousness of characters and their psychological complexities. Thank you so much. I will see you next lecture.